Hi everyone, welcome to See and Learn. I'm Saba. Don't you wish you were here? Tonight we're at Long Hall Grill in Windward Side, where locals always come for local snacks, burgers, pizzas, and a lot of entertainment. But tonight's entertainment is going to be different. We have seagrass expert Sheila Scolaro, and maybe you never paid attention to seagrass before, but I guarantee that after this you will. So we're going to get started pretty soon. Why don't you come on in and join the fun at Long Hall. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to See and Learn. We have some new people in the crowd, so let's give them a welcome. We have a special evening because we're going to give you a little bit of a double header. But before we get there, a couple things we need to tell you. Except I'm not moving at them. Hold on. Oops. Hold on. In case you didn't see it, we're going to show it to you again. So we have a great evening, but our live streaming is brought to us by Carib Trans. Carib Trans is a cargo freight forwarder, and you may wonder when you live on a 5-square-mile island, how do you get your Amazon packages? Well, this is a great way. So thanks to Carib Trans that provide live streaming. We have people watching around the world, and if you get home and you missed a presentation, or once you go back and you want to watch other presentations, they're on Facebook indefinitely, and they'll be on YouTube at the end of the month. Our speaker tonight is sponsored by Hummingbird Villa. So our program is not possible without a lot of great sponsors, so we'll talk about all of those. But for tonight, just know that she is housed at this beautiful villa, and she can tell you it's a great place. So thanks to Hummingbird. Prince Bernhard Culture Funds and Public Entities SABA are our main sponsors. We would not be able to supply the type of programming we do without their help, so thank you very much to them. And here's all our other sponsors. So we have more than 50 sponsors just for this event, for this project. So you can help by supporting a sponsor, telling a sponsor thank you for supporting them, and of course, put your business in that direction. We are Emily, wave your hand in the back, and we have business cards, not because we want to show you, we have a business card with our name on it. On the back of it, you will see that you can help us out. You know, maybe you say, I can't really afford to buy a raffle ticket. Well, or even if you do, the other thing you can do to support us is to write a review. So we are now have great status with great nonprofits, an organization that we had to prove ourselves to. And your reviews help, and that helps with big foundation money and with donor support. So check it out and give us a review. We have raffle tickets. I think we told you that. But there are great prizes to win with our raffle tickets. So for $5, it'll be drawn on the last night from a liveaboard dive trip to handcrafted knives, incredible stays at villas and cottages. We have some of our sponsors in the crowd tonight. We have Larry and Sherry, who own Flamboyant Cottage, beautiful place on Booby Hill with a 4-island view and a pool. So you can win 3 free nights there. So we would hope that you win 3 free nights and stay for 7 or 14. So a great reason to come back to Saba. There's also Spyglass Villa, the new penthouse at the Cottage Club. We have an organic garden lesson sponsored by Sabre Reach Foundation. Marie is here. She makes beautiful natural jewelry. Jo Bean is normally here. I don't see her tonight, but she's our hot glass master. Veronica's making a new special rum on the island. You can win a bottle of rum. Anna Keene does indigo dyeing. The Hideaways doing dinner for 2. Shea Booba is giving away a special prize. Our new coffee table book. Aquamania Adventures has a sunset cruise for those of us who live here, or if you're coming back to St. Martin. And I'm going to give you 3 tennis lessons if you win my prize. Upcoming events. Tomorrow, our expert, because you're going to be so engaged tonight, you're going to be like, yeah, I want to sign up for that. So instead of just going for a dive, you can go for a dive and make a difference and learn more about seagrass, but also help her with some of her scientific work she's going to tell you more about. Our next presentation is going to be Tuesday, so we do them every other night. That presentation's at the new hotel called Arawak, and it's going to be Vince Capone. And Vince Capone is an amazing, fascinating scientist who's been doing underwater sonar mapping for years. Emily and I brought his team in April, and he's going to teach us about what they learned. They mapped the entire island from the shoreline to 600 feet deep, but he's also done some pretty amazing work other places in the world. His field project does not involve a dive, but you get to go out on the boat and see the equipment. So he's bringing some pretty cool, expensive equipment, so you can join us for that on Wednesday. So those are our short-term upcoming things. To get the full schedule, thank you. Lucky Dubé, all right. For the full schedule, check out the tent. There's posters around town or our website. There's a full calendar. So before we get to tonight's main speaker, we're going to have what we're calling a mini presentation. And we got 2 special gals who have had this idea, and they're making it come to light, and they're going to tell you all about it. So I'm going to introduce you to Debbie and Terry, and they own a new company called Boomerang, which is in line with the See and Learn thinking of being environmentally conscious. So let's give a warm applause.
Oh, thank you very much, everybody, for arriving today. Thank you, Lynn and Emily, for inviting us. Thank you, See and Learn, for giving us the opportunity. Slide. Oh, this was supposed to... Oh, missing slide. Our logo. Oh.
Well, you have your T-shirts. There we
go. Okay, so our logo. It's kind of important because who are we and what are we doing? Well, we're opening a little shop, which is a shop like no other on an island like no other. Thank you, Lynn, for that one. Anyway, it's a little shop that we are going to start in our own little cottage on the island, traditional cottage, and it's all about reducing our footstep and respecting our resources and reducing throwing away things and thinking outside of the box and renewing things and making new things. So why do we do that? So this is the first slide. Why? Now, we don't have to tell you how ecologically friendly that is, how it is important to be more responsible about throwing away things. You all know that. We are passionate. I'm passionate about nature, and David Attenborough is my hero. And he said something very hopeful, that we still have a window where we can change the course of what's happening now around the world. And it's very important for us to keep the hope that we can change things, because if we give up hope, we don't change things and nothing will happen. So in Dutch they say, verbeter de wereld, begin by yourself, which means change the world, begin with yourself, which I think is a very good one, because everybody in the world thinks they have to start. The government has to start, the factories have to start, but I think we have to start. I have to start. Terry? I have to start. You have to start. Your children have to start. We all have to start about changing things, throwing things away. He hasn't. Now, we are in a very, very special place on the world. We're on Sabre, which actually makes this a little bit more complicated, because for the people who don't live on Sabre, it is sometimes hard to imagine the complications of it. But opening a second-hand shop, which is not anymore, that's not the name anymore, it's an everything shop. It is difficult here on the island to get rid of your second-hand stuff. You have a shed full of stuff. You want to get rid of it. You're either bored of it or you're leaving the island. The only thing you can do, you can put it on Sabre Classified, and which we love Sabre Classified, but you only have a small window of time, and you have a small pool of people who can buy it. 1,500 people on the island. You want to sell your crib. Your child is ready, no more crib. Nobody on the island is pregnant. Nobody wants that crib. Where does the crib go? It goes to the trash. Next month, your neighbor is pregnant, needs a crib. No more crib to be had, has to order it online. Now, what we want to do is we will widen that window. So instead of people throwing things away, they will call us. We will clean it, we will repair it, we will put it in our shop, and we will keep it in our shop until somebody gets pregnant and buys the crib. But that is kind of ideal. But not only that, we're also going to make new things out of trash. So we want it not to end here. Ooh, here. Even though this is a fantastic thing, this is the dump, they are reducing the burning of garbage, and they are now starting to ship it out. So it's being shipped out with a big magnet. This is all metal thing. But shipping it out costs money, it costs resources, and where does it go? Because that's my concern. Where does it go? Because I know it might end up in the jungle in Indonesia. So what we want to do is reduce the stuff that goes to the dump. If we cut that and we make it less that goes to the dump. Now, just for some numbers, this is cut short. Can I go up a little bit?
Okay, so that's all right. I'll read it out to those in the back. The open back truck, which rides around and picks up our big stuff that is not just regular trash bags, took 8,884 kilos of stuff last month.
Which is lumber, old furniture, stuff that doesn't that big.
Right, so you're cleaning out your shed, and that's what it goes. And private vehicles
This little truck
took in 63,368 kilos of stuff last month. That's 72,000 kilos of stuff that's not just regular trash.
72,000 kilos, 1 month. We think that's 72,000 kilos of possibilities of reusing it, of cleaning it, of painting it, or refurbishing it. For example, there was a pile of metal. That's the metal that went onto the ship. We went to have a look. I saw 40 of those chairs. Really nicely stackable, ugly, dated, but we thought, okay, well, that's wood. We can paint it. We can spray paint the thing. We can put new furnishing on. Next day we went back. It was crushed. It was gone. And these would have been fantastic in rental, because we're also going to rent out things. See and Learn might have used it. Opportunities enough. But anyway, they're there, they're gone. So we want to change it. And when we are changing it, in the meantime, we also do other things. Things that we love doing. We pick up trash. And Terry is going to hand this through. It's going to pass around. You can have a look at it. Please return it. We pick up trash This was found at one particular trash bin. Somebody threw all this out. We went with Truckee, picked it up, and Terry said, "This is useless." I said, "No." And we sanded it down, and they are now doorsteps. So we made them into doorsteps. This is doorstops. This is the harbor, airport road, trail, windward side. So there's going to be lots of those. So I'm trying to think outside of the box and reuse stuff.
And she's so creative. She has a million ideas going all the time.
Okay, this is another one. Shipping line, a fisherman line. I was told how much line they use per year. It's incredible. Fishermen use a lot of line. And they don't throw it away because they're wasteful. They throw it away because it becomes brittle and they can't use it. But we can use it. So what did I do? I collected the ropes. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Bogan, for the shipping line. Made them into mats. Here are two examples. This is the back. It has latex on the back so it doesn't slide. And it's a complicated process because you start big and then you have to make it small. And Annie, who works at Langoustier Rope Mats in Cornwall, UK, is helping me. I don't know this girl. I found her on FaceTime. She's helping me, guide me through making the mats. And she makes amazing mats. If you're in Cornwall, go and check it out. It's incredible. So that's a new thing. We're constantly inventing the wheels. We're not experienced rope makers. This is the second rope mat I'm making. And the next time we're making something else. We're collecting feed bags. On this island, a lot of people import feed bags. Come over here. Yeah.
Here we go. Need to barbecue.
We have a feed bag. We have a simple bird's apron made out of the feed bag because they import the feed bags, goat feed, bird feed, rabbit, whatever. The bags get thrown away. Those are incredible material and good resources to make new stuff from. New bag made.
Michael's dog.
Yeah. Yeah, we know exactly where the bags come from, so we can thank that Peter Rudolph Johnson for the apron. And anyway, this is all very, very cool because we know who gives it to us. But what we want to know is, what we want to spread out is, please give us these bags. Give us the bags, and please give them to us when they are just emptied. And this is very important to us because people throw them in the garage, and then whoever crawls into those bags are coming to my house, and we have to clean them. And next to that, sometimes they lie in the sun, they become a bit brittle. So the bags are very, very strong, but they do not like sunlight. So if they lie in the sun, they become a bit brittle. And you can see it with the bag, it's got ripped. And it got ripped when we were finished making it, which is very frustrating. Anyway, bags. How are we on time? Okay, here. Ta-da! We made some lights. Old colander. Cool colander. And, yeah. All right, okay, enough sales stuff. Anyway, this is a record, yeah? And that's a record, and the bowls are made of long player records. Donated by Hank. Not voluntarily, he passed away. We got a pile of records. We love Hank. We don't love the taste of his music, the trucker music. So we decided to do something else with them, made them into bowls. But to be honest, the ideal is that we will only make things from things that haven't been sold. So normally we would put it in the shop, see if it sells. If it doesn't sell, we make it into something else because somebody might like trucker songs. I don't know, not me, but anyway. It could also become, I'm trying to find a way to use it as a tabletop on this beautiful tractor tire that we have, which is still it's in the process of getting painted. I got some legs for it. The mats. Nearly everybody on Sabre has one of these mats. They fade, they become horrible, so we'll clean them up and we paint them. That's what we do. Terry has made fantastic dive pocket sleeve.
So you're going swimming, snorkeling. You can put something here in the little pocket. You got your GoPro. You're going to just clip it on and off you go.
All right. We got donated a pile of old dive suits. What do you want to do with stinky old dive suits? Well, this is what we're doing. Now, you need to know, as another, they're not stinky anymore. We wash them.
They've been cleaned. The other thing is that neoprene is actually environmentally incredibly unfriendly in the manufacturing of it and in the disposal of it. So the best we can do is use our wetsuits for as long as we possibly can, take good care of them, and when we're done with them and they get that little hole that lets the water in, pass it on to somebody that's going to make something good with it. There are a lot of organizations that do this, and we're excited that we have all this material to do something on Saba.
Okay, so that's the neoprene sleeve, the dive sleeve. Do know that we are not factory workers. We are not expert in making one thing 1,000 times. Every single thing we make, we stand there and say, how are we going to do that? What kind of tool do we need? So now we need to order a new tool that will end up the cutting of the neoprene. So this is, it's going to grow. It's going to grow. And eventually we want to get one of those amazing machines, but they're very expensive. You can throw all kind of scraps of material and t-shirts and everything that's all colored, and it will weave it into a new cloth. And we can have rolls and rolls of cloth from all the t-shirts that we all sell out and throw away. Okay, what else? The old yogurt containers I'm cutting out because that's where the price tags are going to go on, so I don't have to throw away all the price tags. This is old birthday cards. I am keeping the cover. I'm hoping everybody will bring them to me, because I will pound, or what's that thing called? Punch them out, make them into a new label. Instead of another happy birthday label, we reuse what we have already. What we also do, we clean and repair furniture and other stuff around the house. So we have 10 old style Saban windows, the wooden ones. Anybody who has a traditional cottage knows impossible to get a replacement. You have to get the carpenter to make one. If one of the window panes breaks, that's a problem, because you cannot get that piece of glass. So we are mastering the art of kintsugi, which is the art of precious scars. It's an embracement of your flaws and imperfections. So instead of finding a new piece of glass for the window pane, I kintsugi'd it with gold powder, and now instead of becoming invisible, it is clearly visible, and it's pretty. It's very pretty. Here we are collecting old shingles from an old cottage. It's a lot of work. We got 5 boxes full of shingles, which is going to go on our lumber shed. This is the lumber shed that we build. Terry built it together with Alex.
Taught me how to do roofing and helped me with the structure, and we built the rest.
We built what we could. We were trying to find it out. We had lots of arguments because, you've got to think what comes first. Anyway, the old shutters of our house are the doors. This is where the windows go. And this is something important, I think, for Saba. Because if you look at the inside of this lumber shed, you would think that you need lots of long bits of lumber, which is the only lumber that we can buy here. So you buy 16 feet of lumber. But if you see how many small bits are being used, why do you have to buy that very expensive lumber when your neighbor has just thrown away bits of lumber? But your neighbor has thrown it away, and it's in the trash, and it's in the dump, it's nowhere else. But we are now collecting it. I am measuring it. It says exactly the amount of inches. You pay per inch. Every board has a category. Is it new? Has it paint on it, cement, or does there still some nails sticking in? Whatever you want.
And another important consideration we have on Saba is that we have to worry every year for 6 months out of the year about hurricanes. So we can't just pile the stuff up in our yard. So it's not easy to keep it stored.
No, and instead of just keeping it stored and moving it around every hurricane season, bring it to us. We will keep it. We will sell it. But go, quick. Okay. Also, we want to encourage people to not waste. So don't buy wrapping paper for your birthday presents. Buy a nice piece of cloth. Wrap your present in that with a nice ribbon. Make an agreement with the person that you give it to, whether they even give it back or they have another piece of cloth. Ideally, everybody would have one on the island. That is what furoshiki is. Also Japanese. Shashiku, old jeans. Fantastic old jeans. You love it to bits. There's a rip in it. Make it and repair it. Even everybody can see it. Doesn't matter. We're renting out stuff. You want your sledgehammer for an hour. You have to go and get one for $80 at the shop. Or you come to us and rent it for a week, much cheaper, you get the stuff done. So that's going to save a lot of money for people on Sabre. We have boomer boxes to rent for parties and events, and it will, oh man. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, and we're going to be refinishing furniture and things like that as best we can. Go on to the next one. It's okay. All right. Also consignment, but then encouraging people to sell homegrown products and things from the garden.
Yep. And here we also have services. You have a piece of lumber you want it cut. You don't have the tools. Come and bring it here. We cut it for you for a fee, of course, because we need to make our money. We clean everything. Everything will be sterilized, steamed, pressure cleaned, washed in the washing machine. We do not become a stinky little shop. We will be a nice shop in a very, very lovely cottage. We have a voucher system. You donate to us. For every $10 we sell from your donated goods, you get a stamp. Too long? Yeah. And we also, because at a certain point there's not going to be enough to go around, we will go and make a journey, get new good stuff from good second-hand shops abroad, because the pool is much bigger, and we will take it here. This is our storage, only 1/3 full at the moment in this picture. It's really packed now because it's waiting for us to scrape the floor, paint the house, and when that is done, we will have a grand opening. There will be a barbecue, there will be music. We will be open, and from that moment on, when you see our little house with the flag up, we are open and you can come in. And you can come and have a look or you donate. But before you throw things away, if you throw it, we will catch it. And if you need to contact us, this is our Boomerang Facebook page. This is a QR code to get there. That's our mobile number and the landlines. Please contact us. We are going to be here tonight. If you have more questions, we're done. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
All right. Thank you, Debbie and Terry, for your mini, not so mini presentation. Okay, our main speaker tonight is up next. And we are going to guarantee that tonight's speaker is going to open your eyes and change your mind about seagrass. Serious photographers may know there's often interesting critters within these meadows, but most divers just swim over the carpeted seafloor without any interest. Sheila Scolaro is here to change that. Sheila was born and raised in West Central Florida, where she grew up snorkeling and fishing the grass flats. With her tip net and bucket in tow, she would swim around the meadow, collecting, observing, and becoming even more enamored with the diversity of life hiding just below the surface of the water. Her passion to protect these sensitive areas led her to study plant science at the University of Florida and earn a Master's of Science in Conservation Biology. She's now the Community Program Scientist for the Tampa Bay Estuary Program. She coordinates seagrass and macroalgae monitoring efforts and facilitates a community advisory committee and coordinates community engagement through volunteer events and citizen science programming. Wow, just the sort of things we like to hear, and making her an ideal presenter for See and Learn. So let's find out why the grass is greener at some of our dive sites by welcoming Dr. Sheila Scolaro.
Hello, everyone.
Oh,
There's the initial slide. Well, I don't know if I can top their presentation, but I will certainly try. Thank you so much, Lynn, and to everyone at the See and Learn Foundation for inviting me here. It's a beautiful, beautiful country. I've never been to Saba before, so thank you very much. And thank all of you for coming out and for your interest in learning about seagrass tonight. And thank you to the Hummingbird Villa. Your house is amazing, so thank you for sponsoring us. So as Lynn said, we are going to hop in and explore the hidden meadows below. So take a deep dive into the wonderful world of seagrass. So Lynn pretty much told you all about me, but basically the most important thing is that I grew up snorkeling and fishing in the grass flats, and so it was really at a young age that I became really amazed at the diversity of life hiding just below the surface. So that really shaped me and my career. So when I was I was a senior in high school, the oil spill, the Deep Horizon oil spill happened, and so there was a bunch of oil heading straight for our seagrass meadows that I had grown so passionate about. So it was at that moment that I knew that I wanted to dedicate my career to protecting and restoring these really fragile ecosystems. So as Lynn mentioned, I've studied plant science and conservation biology. For my master's degree, I studied sexual reproductive capacity and life history of seagrasses in Tampa Bay. And then following that, I have conducted and run several seagrass and water quality monitoring programs, both for local municipalities as well as statewide agencies. So fun fact about me, I've seen almost the entire Gulf Coast of Florida by boat, and I can picture all of the seagrasses from the Panhandle down to the Keys. So I know if that might not be a cool thing, right? Kind of weird, but I have dreams about them. So I'm currently one of the scientists at the Tampa Bay Estuary Program, where I manage a seagrass monitoring program for the largest open estuary in the state of Florida. And I coordinate the Southwest Florida Seagrass Working Group, which is really important because it brings together a group of bay managers and seagrass scientists from around our region to come together and try and discuss and solve some of the challenges associated with seagrass loss in our region. But before we jump into seagrass, I just wanted to kind of zoom out a little bit. Many times we think about underwater habitats as unique or isolated ecosystems. But really, these ecosystems are connected. We consider them in this world of seagrass, and as an estuary scientist, we consider them part of a seascape. And so a seascape is a patchwork of diverse and interconnected ecosystems. So in the Caribbean, your seascape primarily consists of mangrove forests, coral reefs, and seagrass meadows. So what's really critical about a seascape is that each ecosystem is really dependent on the other ecosystem for survival and to be fully functioning. So, for example, here in the Caribbean, the mangrove forests are primarily like the first ecosystem that you have right against the shoreline. So they experience a lot of, and they collect a lot of the sediments and nutrients that run off of the land. And so this is important because it sort of stabilizes and creates clean water for the seagrasses to then grow. So then a little bit farther out in your seascape, you have your seagrass meadows. The seagrasses have really long blades, and so that further slows down the water movement and allows additional sediment particles to settle out. And then from there, you have the coral reefs, which use that really clean water that the seagrasses and the mangroves have created and can really grow into the amazing corals that you see all throughout the Caribbean. So zooming in into what we're all here today to learn about, seagrasses. what are seagrasses? A lot of times, like Lynn said, divers kind of just swim over them, don't really think anything of them. I know where I come from, people think that they're really gross, they're slimy a lot of times, nobody wants to touch them. But seagrasses are really essential for a thriving seascape. Unlike seaweeds, which are algae, seagrasses are rooted marine flowering plants. So they convert energy from the sun and carbon dioxide from the water column and convert that into sugars and carbohydrates. So they need abundant light to grow and reproduce. Light is actually considered the main driver for how deep seagrasses will go in the water column. Interestingly, seagrasses are land plants that migrated back into the water column about 100 million years ago. And because of that, they retain a lot of the same characteristics that we see in land plants today. And so one of those characteristics is that they can reproduce both sexually or asexually, which is something that we'll talk about a little later. And then interestingly, seagrasses grow on every continent on the globe except for Antarctica, which I wouldn't want to grow on Antarctica if I was a seagrass either. So this is where I come from. So this is all of our seagrass beds. As you can see, they're very close to the shore. So this is where all of my work is done. These are some seagrass flowers, which I'll show you a little bit more farther on. So why should you care about these marine plants? Well, seagrasses provide really essential ecosystem services. And for those of you who don't know, ecosystem services is just a way for us to put a monetary value on on the services that we obtain as a community from the natural world. And so seagrasses provide habitat for really commercially and recreationally important species. For example, they provide nursery for offshore fish like grouper and snapper. Does anybody here like to eat grouper or fish for grouper or snapper? Yeah, I know I do. In addition, they're also a nursery for the really beautiful coral reef fish that you see out on the corals, that I'm sure many of you have lots of pictures of. And then there are hiding grounds for bait fish and many other lower level foods, which is really important in sustaining our the entire food web system. Because they provide this nursery for so many fishes, they're a really critical forage or feeding grounds for many iconic fish and birds at really important times in their life cycles. And of course, they are food for iconic species like manatees, dugongs, and sea turtles. I know I was out diving a couple days ago here on Saba, and as we were going up, we were kind of passing over a seagrass bed, and obviously I was super excited. Nobody else cared, but there was a turtle that was grazing in the seagrass bed, so that was really exciting for me to see. And then seagrasses also reduce erosion. They help to stabilize sediment. So this improves overall water clarity by trapping these extra sediment particles. And then because seagrasses are plants and they convert carbon dioxide into sugars and carbohydrates that they store underground, they're considered blue carbon. So what this means is it's just a form of a living organism like seagrasses or mangroves that capture the carbon from the atmosphere and store it in the ground. So it's kind of taking out that carbon. So seagrasses, it's estimated that seagrasses capture about 27.4 million tons of carbon per year. And so this is really important as we enter a period of not only excess carbon in our atmosphere, but also in our waters. And because they capture all of that carbon, they're also known to be a buffer to ocean acidification, which is really important here in Saba because your seagrass beds are so close to the coral reefs. However, although these systems are so essential for a thriving ecosystem, they are classified as poor and declining. scientists suggest that about 30% of our seagrass beds have declined just since the 1980s. Because they live and grow so close to shore. Sorry, this keeps falling down. Can you guys hear me in the back? Okay. So because they live so close to shore, they're under significant stress from terrestrial pollution, which is pollution coming from the land, poor water quality, and activities, human activities like anchoring, for poor fishing practices, and boat propeller scarring. In addition to these big three stressors, seagrasses are also facing new stressors, including climate change and invasive species. Unlike many plants that we see above the ground or above the water, seagrasses have really limited taxonomic diversity. There's only 72 species of seagrass worldwide, and they're classified into only 4 families. So this represents about 0.002% of all angiosperms globally. So because of this limited taxonomic diversity, it makes them very susceptible to extinction and a priority for conservation efforts worldwide. So this is where I come from. So this is from nutrient pollution coming off of the land. Luckily, this was in the 1970s, and the bay no longer looks like that. But so those are just that just represents some of the challenges that are facing our seagrass beds. And then here is a seagrass species that we'll talk quite a bit about. And this is an invasive species that's now starting to inhabit Ceiba. So Ceiba seagrasses, we're going to kind of zone it in a little bit and talk about the different seagrasses that you can see both on Ceiba and in the Caribbean as a whole. So here there are about 5 main species of seagrass that you're likely to see. 4 of those seagrasses are native, and then 1 of those seagrasses are invasive. So the native seagrass species include Haliduli wrightii, or shoalgrass, Syringodium filiforme, or manatee grass, Thalassia testudinum, or turtle grass, which is my personal favorite, and then Halophila decipiens, or paddlegrass. I know, as seagrass scientists, we are very creative in how we name our species. And then the invasive species is Halophila stipulaceae. Unfortunately, there isn't a common name that's been going around yet for that one, so I'll just be calling it Halophila stipulaceae. So, the bad guy, or the invasive guy, yeah. So, jumping right in, shoalgrass. This is a picture of shoalgrass. It's pretty easy to identify if you're snorkeling or you're diving over the seagrass bed. It's really slender. It has flat blades, and its tips are kind of in this like crowned shape. So if you think of like a king's crown, how it's got those kind of like 3 spikes, that's pretty much what the tips of shoalgrass look like. It occurs on really shallow shoals, hence the name, and it's tolerable of really wide salinity. So you can often see it in areas where there's freshwater inflows, but you can also see it sort of on the deeper edge of a reef. Shoalgrass is considered a pioneer species, which means that it's typically the first species that will come in after a major disturbance, like a hurricane or another grazing disturbance. This is really important because it stabilizes sediment and creates a living habitat. So you start getting those fish and other critters starting to move in, and it allows or creates a nice space for other seagrass species to start moving in. It is considered ephemeral because it is that pioneer species. So the populations tend to move around, and that's pretty much because when shoalgrass comes in, other species, typically native species, will come in afterwards and will outcompete it. All part of a natural cycle. Up next, we have manatee grass. Can anybody guess why we call it manatee grass? Exactly. Manatees love to eat it. And what's really interesting about this species is it actually has high sugar content. So scientists think that that's the reason why manatees specifically target this species of seagrass. So Serengodium or manatee grass is, again, really easy to spot. It has these long cylindrical blades. So if you actually, and you can kind of see it from this picture, but if you were to grab a blade and move it between like two fingers, you would feel that it's very like cylindrical, to where like similar to a piece of spaghetti or or a straw. So manatee grass is really tolerable of deep edges, so you'll often see it on the deeper side of a reef. Where I come from, it's typically right before the drop-off. And then it's often found in mixed beds, which means that it's often mixed with other seagrass species. Up next, we have paddlegrass. This can kind of be inconspicuous. It has really short paddle-shaped blades. And so if it's growing with other seagrass species, you can tend to miss it, or you won't see it just because the blades are so small. It's also often observed with two blades, so if you're looking at it from above, it'll kind of look like this V shape. And what makes this one really easy to spot, if you can't tell just from that kind of like round figure, it has this really nice mid-vein, and none of the other seagrasses have just a single mid-vein that comes up. And what's cool about this species, it has really low light requirements. So it's in the Gulf of Mexico, it can grow as deep as 150 meters. So scientists who are doing 50 meters, sorry, 150 feet, getting them mixed up. So scientists who are going out and doing some of the like fish sonars, or side scan sonars, which I think Vince might be showing you how he does some of the side scan sonars. So this species will actually show up on some of those side scan sonars. And then moving on to my personal favorite species, and that's because I have studied, this has been like the focus of my study. But we get to turtle grass. Turtle grass is really wide, has ribbon-like blades. So it tends, as it comes up, and you can kind of see it from here, but it tends to come up and kind of start to spiral, like you see if you are, like when you're wrapping a present and you see the ribbon kind of starts to spiral. This is a primary source of food for green turtles, hence why we call it turtle grass. And it forms these really dense meadows. It will occur by itself or mixed with other species, as is pretty common with many of the seagrasses. What's interesting about turtle grass is that it forms, it has really extensive underground biomass. So that means that the majority of the plant is actually below ground in its roots and rhizomes. Rhizomes are just lateral roots. So this is typically, especially in the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, this is typically the species that we're referring to when we talk about that high carbon sequestration, because it's holding that carbon in place. And what's really unique about turtle grass is that it has this high capacity for sexual reproduction. So as I mentioned earlier, seagrasses can reproduce both sexually or asexually. So asexual reproduction is done through rhizome extension, which means that these lateral roots below the surface kind of extend out and they pop up a new clone, or what we would call a ramette. Unfortunately, asexual reproduction does not result in a new individual, but it's considered, because it's a clone, it's the exact same as the mother plant. Sexual reproduction, on the other hand, is done through underwater flower production and results in really high genetic diversity, which means that it results in really high number of traits and a high number of individuals. So seagrasses, particularly turtle grass, is dioecious, which means that it has separate male and female plants. And the sexes are distinguishable if they are actively undergoing sexual reproduction. So, and what's really great about turtle grass is that the flowers are really quite large. They're about the size of a quarter. So even if you're just swimming over it, it's pretty easy to spot a flower. So at the top, you have a female flower. And this is a little bit harder to see because it's kind of like this green color. And then the male flower is pretty easy to spot. It's typically bright white, and it sometimes will have pink spots or purple spots on it. So they're really cool to see a flower underwater. Turtle grass typically reach sexual maturity at about 2 years of age, and temperature, salinity, and photoperiod, or the amount of hours of daylight, are considered cues for inducing flower production. So to set, yes?
Is there a pollinator, or is it just the waterborne pollen?
Ooh, I will get there. Yeah. So it's actually this slide. So to set the mood a little bit, on summer-spring tides at sunset, males will undergo a synchronized pollen release. So all of the male flowers will open and release all of their pollen all at once. And then there is a combination of biotic and abiotic mechanisms to pollinate the flowers, which means that it includes a combination of living and non-living mechanisms. So the abiotic pollination is done through what's called hydrophily, which is simply pollen movement by water. So that's the currents moving the pollen from the male plant or the male flower and hopefully landing on a female flower. Biotic pollination is really cool, and it's called zoobenthophyly. And so this is the transport of pollen by small marine invertebrates or marine worms. And so this is, if you can vision it underwater, you've got a male flower, and a small marine worm or a juvenile crab will come up and start munching on the male flower. A piece of pollen will inadvertently get deposited on his back, and then he's still hungry, obviously, so then he goes over to the female flower and starts munching on the female flower, and then that pollen becomes deposited on the female flower, and pollination occurs. So they're like little bees of the sea. I think it's kind of like the most miraculous thing. So that's zoobenthophyly. So to answer your question, it's a combination. If pollination is successful, fruits then begin to develop on the plant. So if you can see, I don't know, it might be hard to see in the back, but this little guy right here is a fruit. Again, about the size of a quarter, sits right on top of the sediment surface. And then when the fruit is, or when the seedlings are all mature, the fruit will pop open and little seedlings will roll out. And so you can see a couple seedlings up here in this top picture. And seedlings are about the size of a little chocolate morsel. So if you've ever made chocolate chip cookies, seedlings look about the exact same, and they're about the exact same size, except they're green. They do taste really good, I'm not going to lie. I have tasted them before, but I'm the type of person that will try about anything. But I don't recommend eating seagrass seedlings. The seagrass seedlings are viviparous, which means that they have already germinated when they leave the mother plant. So they root much faster, typically only in about 3 days. So although it's really complicated, this sexual reproduction results in really high genetic diversity, which is really important for long-term habitat resilience. And then finally, on to the last species of seagrass that we find here, the bad guy. So this is Halophila stipulaceae. Again, it's invasive. It's native to the Red Sea, but it has been rapidly invading the Caribbean for about the past 20 years. It was first noted in St. Martin in about 2013. And so this map gives you an idea of when it was first noted on the different islands. So Halophila, or the bad guy, propagates mainly by fragmentation. So that means that if a piece of the plant comes off, it'll float along with the currents and then can reroot somewhere else. It has these really short, oblong leaves. And what makes this one really easy to spot is that it has multiple veins. It has this long mid vein that comes up the middle, which was similar to paddlegrass. However, what's different is that it has these lateral veins that come off of that mid vein. Yeah. So it's very veiny. That's an easy way to remember it. And another issue with this guy is that it has really shallow roots, so it's really easy to kind of just kick your fin and you'll uproot a piece of the Halophila species. So what are some of the driving forces that are kind of allowing this invasion? One of the main ones is storm and inter-island vessel transportation. So I got here on a ferry. I don't know if anybody else came on a ferry. Yeah, so there's a lot of inter-island transportation, both for people as well as supplies. And so those vessels can pull up some of as they're pulling up some of the water, they can also pull in some of the invasive species of seagrass. In addition, we all, many of us whoever lives here has gone through a hurricane season. If you've ever been through a hurricane, you know that these very strong storms can cause a lot of turbulence in the water. And so it can actually uproot any plants that have really shallow root systems. And so that can carry it and kind of help this invasion process. Unfortunately, coastal fishing is another thing that's driving this invasion. Fish traps and lobster traps, a lot of times when they're pulled up, they'll have this invasive species sitting on top of it or connected to it somehow, and then when the fisherman drops it in another place, it will deposit that seagrass in a new location. Another thing that's contributing to this is the beautiful, stable environment in the Caribbean. There's very limited temperature variability, which really provides a great place for invasions or invasive species to take over. Unlike temperate regions where if an invader comes in, it's got a really cold winter it's got to go through, and then that invader will die off. So unfortunately, we don't have anything like that here. Florida's also the same way. That's why we're like the main place for invasive species. And then reduced grazing could also be contributing to some of this invasion. You have a lot of grazers here, but maybe manatees and turtles prefer manatee grass and turtle grass, so they're not going to eat this invasive bad guy. So that allows this guy to continue to flourish. So some of the impacts from this, they have really shallow roots, so it can allow for increased erosion. It doesn't have that same sediment holding capacity. Studies do suggest that it will outcompete some of the native species that you see in the Caribbean. So that can really reduce habitat complexity and could potentially alter your seagrass communities. And I'm thinking like the animal communities that live in the seagrasses. And then we also, in addition to seagrasses, you also have a lot of different macroalgae that occur here. So unlike seagrasses, macroalgae are seaweeds, and they aren't real plants. They lack a vascular system, which is like the main guts or veins of a plant that transport all the sugars and goodies and all that kind of stuff. And they lack true roots. But I won't go too much into this because I know you guys are going to have a really awesome speaker tell you everything you need to know about sargassum and macroalgae in Saba. So I really was interested in the kind of current state of seagrass on Saba. Lynn had mentioned that there was potentially some invasive species out here, so I was really curious about it. So I went out with Tobias and Lex, and we studied some seagrasses a couple days ago. So here's what we found. So first, we headed down and we recorded seagrass and macroalgae abundance within 8 25 by 25 meter quadrats. So a quadrat is basically just a small square, gives us an idea of area. So this is basically what we looked like. Abundance was recorded using what we call Brom Blanc abundances. So instead of recording the exact abundance, so 15%, 17%, we recorded it in sort of this abundance bin. And the bins include solitary, less than 1% cover, 1 to 5% cover, 6 to 25, and so on. And the reason we use these abundance classifications is that it provides us with better quality data. So the first thing that I wanted to look at after we got back and we were assessing the data, I really wanted to look at the diversity of seagrasses at Fort Bay Harbor. So in order to do this, I calculated frequency of occurrence, which is the number of times that a species is observed divided by the total number of quadrats that we threw. And so I was surprised to see that so here, the invasive species is in orange, and the native species is, this is manatee grass, is in blue. So I was happy to see that we did see manatee grass at about 75% of the quadrats that we placed. So that was a good sign to me. Unfortunately, we saw the invasive species in every single quadrat. And then we also saw a couple macroalgae that were, yes?
So they actually mix up. They don't like a big patch of one kind of seagrass and another patch of the other kind. They actually do.
Yeah, they'll be kind of interwoven. It'll be like a mixed bed. And I do have some pictures so that you can see how it's like mixed in together. So after we looked at frequency of occurrence, I really wanted to understand, okay, we know what species are there, but how abundant are each one of these seagrass species? So this graph represents the percent abundance of the different species that were observed. So the blue represents the manatee grass, and the orange represents the invasive species. And the bars represent the number of times that a specific abundance class was noticed or was observed. So what this graph is showing me is that although manatee grass was at about 75% of the quadrats that we surveyed, the abundance was relatively low, so from only about to only about 25%. So it was all of the abundance was less than 25%. On the other hand, the invasive species Halophila had the majority of the quadrats had abundance of greater than 25%. So that was really dramatic to me. So it may be that the invasive species are limiting native species expansion. It may be that they're outcompeting the manatee grass, or it may be that this was just a sandy shoal, and they're kind of taking advantage of a place with no other species there. So here's what it looks like down at the bottom. So these red arrows are pointing to the manatee grass. So you can kind of see them. They're these long light green blades. You can see one up here. Everything else that you see in the picture, the dark green, is the invasive species of Halophila.
So the
Go ahead. Yeah.
so the only thing that is large
No, this is just what we found here. She said, so is manatee grass the only species that will grow with this invasive species? That's just what we found here at this site. You can see, you do see other species in combination with this Halophila species, which I'm hoping we'll be able to see more species tomorrow when we go out and do additional surveys. Yes.
And so the manatee grass is sweeter.
The manatee grass is sweeter.
Okay, but we have no manatees. So what is, well, I assume you have no manatees. So what is it that eats this?
There's a lot of things that can eat it. Turtles, although it's said that they favor the turtle grass, they'll also eat manatee grass. Sea urchins will also graze on different species of seagrass. And we did see some sea cucumbers. They'll eat different detritus and seagrass species. Oh yeah. So there are a lot of other things that will eat the seagrass, other than just manatees. So yeah, we did see some other species living in the grass. We saw the sea cucumber. We saw several conchs. I think Tobias found the head of a lobster, which was really cool. And then we also saw some signs of an octopus living nearby. So how you can help the seagrasses. Protect what you have, anchor in sandy patches of seagrass beds, clean your fish traps so you're not contributing to the invasion and transporting those fragments to new locations. Reducing pollution is always a big one. Pick up your pet waste, avoid fertilizer in the summer, and then be active, get involved. One of the really cool ways that you could get involved is participating in the Seagrass Spotter Citizen Science Monitoring effort, which is a global monitoring effort that's being conducted to try and understand where seagrass species are and answer some of these really challenging questions that are facing our seagrasses. So this increased monitoring is really vital to restoration, and it helps to answer some of these questions. Where is this invasive species present? Where is it absent? What mechanisms are contributing to that? How quickly is it spreading? Is it displacing native species? And what are the impacts to the animal community that was originally dependent on that seagrass species? What I've found with this invasive species is that it has spread relatively quickly, and there seems to be more questions than there are answers at this point. So hopefully tomorrow when we go out, we'll start to break down some of those questions and start to learn a little bit more. And this is just final thoughts. They're essential to ecosystem services. They're degrading. They're sensitive to climate change, invasive species, and human activities. And so that we really need this enhanced monitoring both worldwide so that we can really start to answer some of these difficult questions. And with that, I will take any questions.
Need to go close.
Does turtle grass compete relatively well with the invasive, given that it's a lot taller, so it might shade out the invasive?
It could. Again, there's. I wish that I had more information to give to you, but these are still a lot of things that we're trying to figure out. Studies do suggest that it will hold up better, especially against storms. One study looked at when Hurricane Irma came through, and turtle grass stayed put while most of the invasive species were kind of ripped out with that turbulence. Unfortunately, that invasive species was then carried somewhere else. But part of the issue is that in a really healthy ecosystem, turtle grass will get grazed pretty heavily by turtles. And if they're not grazing the invasive species, then it can start to outcompete that native species, even though it's typically more robust. Yes?
So we have in the Dutch Caribbean rural restoration programs. We have like diadema restoration programs. So I'm really curious. Do you know of any restoration techniques for seagrass? Because right now, like you said, with the invasive and everything, I'm just curious to know if you know anything from Florida side.
So the question is, do I know of any specific restoration techniques that work from Florida or in the Caribbean? In Florida, our main issue that's driving seagrass loss is water quality. So in our areas, everybody wants a really beautiful lawn, so they fertilize the heck out of it, and then all those nutrients get flooded into the water, which promotes algae growth and kills the seagrasses. So where we come from, we try to stop the nutrient pollution at the source and try to build the environment kind of like if you build it, it will come. There are some organizations that have put a lot of money into seagrass restoration to where they'll go out and take big plugs and actually plug seagrasses into different places. That's very labor intensive, it's very expensive, and it in our area at least it hasn't really worked too well. What I would suggest is what species are you trying to restore? Oh, okay. So what I have.
They have started with trying to restore the
Oh, okay. So. Okay. So I know that some organizations are doing some extensive seeding, particularly of shoal grass. So kind of just getting that pioneer species established, and then hoping that the other species will come in. Because the shoal grass seeds are pretty viable, so if you throw a bunch out, a lot will germinate and grow. And then, so that's pretty much what we've seen, but mainly we try to bring it back through nutrient reduction. Cool.
I have one question.
Yes.
So, is the thinking not that invasive seagrass is better than no seagrass?
Yeah, sorry. So invasive species, we're facing this really challenging question of climate change, right? We have no idea how that's going to impact our seagrass beds. You know, in one hand, they're going to have higher water temperatures, more carbon, so maybe they'll grow more. But on the other hand, it's going to be increased sea levels, and so they could potentially get drowned out with the lower light availability. So there are studies that do suggest and say, well, maybe an invasive seagrass is better than no seagrass. So I think I think it's important to keep an open mind, but we're still at the beginning stages of trying to understand what are the implications and what are the ramifications of this invasive species in our waters.
All right.
One more question. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Who actually uses the invasive species in the Red Sea?
The question is, who uses the invasive species in the Red Sea?
You said it came from.
What?
Which animal or which
Oh,
creature?
to be honest, I'm not entirely sure. I don't know. I'm not as familiar with that part of the world. So I would have to look that up and then get back to you, which I would be happy to do.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming, and by all means, we still have some space for the Marine Field Project tomorrow with Sheila, so see Emily, me, or Alexis if you want to sign up, and we'll hope to see you Tuesday night at Arawak.
Miami is known as an international community and the hub of trade and logistics for the Caribbean and Americas. A leader in the freight logistics industry, CaribTrans has served the Caribbean region for more than 30 years, with a footprint that has grown from one island to now serving the majority, as well as Central and South America. CaribTrans is an NVOCC, a non-vessel operating common carrier, meaning it has the same responsibilities as a shipper without owning the vessels or planes. Its primary customers, individuals who ship clothing, electronics, and other personal items, and occasionally cars.
Most of the stuff that they're sending is because they don't get it there. So for us to provide it on two services, air and ocean, we can give it a choice of how fast you want it. So if you want it really fast, we're going to send it by air, you're going to have it next day, sometimes even the same day.
That on-time service has been the key to CaribTrans' success, whether shipping by air or by sea. The company moves about 5,000 TEUs of freight each year, more than any NVOCC in the region. And since it joined the Saltchuk family of transportation companies a couple years ago, CaribTrans can offer customers even more shipping options.
Other NVOCCs, they depend on other shipping lines that are not part of their family. So they need to rely on whether they're going to sell or not, whether they are late or not. It doesn't happen to us because it's part of our family of companies. We control the service that we give.
Sí, buenos días, por favor, con Diana.
Quality service is what keeps customers coming back. Customers are treated like family, and when they leave to research competitors, it doesn't usually last long.
They have left and they have come back because they've said that, nobody does it better than CaribTrans. So because of that relationship.
That exceptional service includes consolidation. Customers can have freight sent here and stored for free for up to a month, then consolidated and shipped on to the islands and Americas, a perk for the region's growing small business market. Puerto Rico is an expanding market for CaribTrans, about the size of Connecticut and rich in history and culture. Puerto Rico is home to many pharmaceutical manufacturers, as well as a thriving tourism industry for which CaribTrans moves raw materials and supplies. But serving small businesses is still the company's bread and butter here in San Juan. Businesses like Caldera Café, a local coffee company. Owner Alfredo Rodriguez started growing coffee beans at his mountain farm about 20 years ago. He recently ordered a variety of new equipment for his farm and shop. He uses CaribTrans because it consolidates shipments, which cuts down on the number of times he has to pay the Puerto Rico import tax.
Not many companies want to do that. They want only big cargoes and maybe half container or full containers, but they don't want to consolidate because it's more difficult.
Turning challenges into opportunities is what CaribTrans does, and that includes helping to grow small businesses like Caldera Café by taking the hassle out of shipping.
We can be a gateway to expand their business in the Caribbean and back to the U.S. And wherever they can sell their products, we are also going to be a partner for them.
That customer dedication has made CaribTrans what it is today. Now, as part of a larger family with more transportation resources, CaribTrans hopes to grow beyond its current market, offering services to additional Latin American ports and eventually Europe and Asia. But even when it becomes a global logistics company, CaribTrans wants to stay true to its roots, always providing personalized, reliable customer service and a commitment to the communities it serves.